got a very special guest here today. Senator Jeff Brandes is here today. He is an Iraq War veteran, businessman, woodshed owner, scuba diver, father of 3 children, including a new baby, former state rep, current state senator for parts of Pinellas and Hillsborough counties, Jeff Brandes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see folks from around the Bay. It's great to see so many people from Trinity and Pasco, Newport Richey, and other areas that have decided to join us today. So, you know, my thought would, I would just tell you a little bit about myself. We would talk about a few things that I'm working on this year, and then I would just answer your questions as the best I can, the ones I want to answer. The ones I don't, we won't answer. You know, I'm born and raised here in St. Petersburg. Was blessed to grow up in a family business, a little lumber company called Caucus lumber company that my grandfather had started, or actually bought when he immigrated here from the Cayman Islands in 1948. He immigrated here to the Caymans, and was blessed to grow up in that family business. Went to a local Christian school where my mom was headmaster, and because of her being headmaster, I decided to join the Army 7 days after high school. And spent the next 10 years in and out of the Army. Spent 03 and 04 in Iraq with the 101st, driving military convoys all across the country. So all the hot spots that I've been to. I don't recommend purchasing any land over there. I don't recommend living there. But you know, the one thing that service to this country provides you, especially when you get to go overseas, is perspective. And you realize that in this country, I would rather be dirt poor and broke in this country that I would be living high on the hog in Iraq or Iran or any of these other countries. I mean, it is just, we are so blessed to live, even with all the challenges and red light cameras and light rail and everything else that we have here in this country and that we're talking about today, or we're going to talk about today. We are blessed to live in a God-fearing country with good people that have founded this country. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to continue to find great people to stay in office and to run for office, because let me tell you, it's harder and harder every single year to find good people, I think, to run for office. And we need great people. We need great people to run for office. We're going to see that here locally with the passing of Congressman Young. I don't think anybody, including myself, recognizes what a loss this is to this community, what a loss it is to Florida, to have someone who has served as long as, you know, Congressman Young, 43 years, in a body that, you know, honestly, for the first 10 years as a freshman legislator in Congress, you basically take orders. I mean, that's how it goes up there. You're really not. You don't have a chairmanship. You don't have a good committee assignment. You really have to struggle to kind of to stay relevant in a body that is as big as Congress. So I think whoever takes his place will really have to get their elbows out the first day. You're never going to be able to fill his shoes. Don't make that the goal, to fill Congressman Young's shoes. Make it to set a new path. We've got to set a new path, and we need bold leaders to step up and do that. So I think it's incumbent upon us to look into ourselves and find and pray for the person who comes out as the Republican nominee for that position, because it's getting harder and harder to find great people to run for this position. You can talk to political consultants and they'll tell you, 10, 15 years ago they were fighting people off to run for Congress. And now it's exact opposite. You're having to kind of drag people kicking and screaming sometimes to run for this office because of the challenging decisions that are going to have to be made in the next 10 years. It's not like anybody's surprised at these decisions, but the Medicare report came out the other day and said, by 2033, Social Security Trust Fund will be out of funds. It said by 2026, the Medicare Trust Fund will be out of funds, and by 2016, the Disability Trust Fund will be out of funds. And so you realize that over the next few years, the difficult decisions that will have to be made, that should have been made years and years ago, that we've been talking about, we know should have been made, or that were not made, are going to have to be made. Because one of my favorite sayings in all of politics is one by Ben Stein's dad, Herb Stein, who worked in Washington for many, many years. And he said that things that are unsustainable tend to stop. So trends that can't continue won't. And as profound as that little statement is, we're about to watch it unfold. You're going to watch it unfold. I think you're going to, I know you're going to watch it unfold with Obamacare. If you look at the amount of people that have signed up today and the people that are actually going through the process to sign up, it's the sickest people that are getting on board. And the reason that that's going to kind of break the entire system is that it's built on a system that at the bottom of the pyramid is all these young, healthy people. But those aren't the people that are signing up. It's the very people at the top that are signing up. And because of that, you're going to crush the entire system. And it's just a matter of time. So we're I don't know a lot about America, but the one thing I do know is that we don't like to be told what to do. And here's an example of being told what to do, and it's where it's going to absolutely fall apart. And I think that the other aisle doesn't understand that. And the Democrats just don't understand that. Americans don't like to be told what to do. And we came to this country for choices, for religious freedom, for freedom of speech, freedom of press. Those are the reasons that we left our homes. When our ancestors left their homes and we came across the ocean and settled here, it was so that we could make our own mind up. And yet we're kind of running headlong into this world where there's some people who want government to make our own minds up for us. So I think that's incredibly scary. But to talk about a little bit of the exciting things that are going on in Florida, let me tell you, you live in a great state. We have challenges here in Florida, but I will take the challenges of Florida for the opportunities of Illinois every day of the week. Every day of the week. We have the Common Core challenge. We have education is obviously a challenge. Immigration is obviously a challenge. Those challenges exist in every state, but Florida has a balanced budget, has $1.5 billion in reserves right now. We're going to continue to add to that over the next few years. We're talking about $500 million in tax cuts this year. One of those, the reduction in tag and title fees, came through my committee last week. We passed it out of my committee. So that's well on its way as a good start. I think we can do more. I think we should do more. We have a catastrophic issue going on, though, in this region right now, and that's flood insurance and subsidization of flood insurance. And I know many of you say, look, if you don't want to live in a flood zone, if you don't want to pay flood insurance, don't live in a flood zone. And I get that. I mean, I get the philosophical argument of not living in a flood zone and not getting subsidized flood insurance. But I also know that the reality is that many of you and many of your neighbors have been a pawn in the great bait and switch that has occurred in the last few months. And that is that overnight, some of you are going to actuarially sound rates. Some of you are going to start paying, who've been paying $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 for flood insurance payments, are going to pay $6,000 or $8,000. Or if you ever sell your homes, you're going to pay, whoever buys your home is going to pay $6,000 or $8,000 for that flood insurance. And so October 1, for many homes in this region, because Pinellas County, Tampa Bay, is ground zero for the United States for subsidized flood insurance. We are a peninsula on a peninsula. I mean, not a great, but I live on a cul-de-sac, so I'm a peninsula on a peninsula on a peninsula. It starts getting rough at that point. But your friends and neighbors are going to struggle if there isn't something done to change this law. And unfortunately, we're paying for Louisiana, we're paying for Katrina's, we're paying for Superstorm Sandy that left that program about $20 billion, about $24 billion in the hole. And they've decided to, in the next few years, make it actuarially sound. But what this is going to do for our region is catastrophic, to say the least. We've been blessed, knock on wood, there's plenty around, to not have been hit by a hurricane this year. But locally, it's going to feel like we were hit by Bridger Waters. It really is. We're talking about our beach communities going down in assessed value by 20%. All homes in that region going down in assessed value potentially by 20%. Areas, Tennessee is, a lot of homes in Tennessee are in a flood zone. And you're talking about that entire region of homes that are very modest. I mean, $100,000 to $200,000, $250,000 homes in Tennessee going down 20 or 30%. So dramatic. And some of them not worth anything more than the dirt value, the land value of the property. So we're talking about taking out the entire, there's no value in the structure at all. It was built in the 1960s. It was what we call a pre-firm home. So you're not hearing a lot about, you're starting to hear a lot about flood insurance, obviously. Wait to what it's like in 6 months if nothing is done. In 6 months, when your neighbors can't buy or sell, when your neighbors can't sell a home, when they get their renewals, and they're 20% increase. But if they bought their home since July 1 of last year, they go to actuarially sound rates. So some of them will go to $4,000, $5,000. If you live in a $150,000 home, $5,000 is a mortgage payment. I mean, multiple mortgage payments. So they're paying more than sometimes in cases they're paying more in flood insurance than they are their principal on their home. It's something that, as a community, as a state, we have got to resolve, because there is no, we can't continue to trust on the feds for this kind of stuff. And people say, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, I think it has to do a lot, because what they're telling you is the same thing about Medicaid, right? So Medicaid, they say, well, just trust us, we'll pay for the first 3 years, and then after that we'll pay 10%, and it's all subsidized, don't worry about it, life will go on, you'll be fine. And then you say, all right, well, what happens year 6 when it's 50-50? What happens when it's 60-40? And you go, wait a second, well, that's a state income tax in Florida. That's a 3-cent sales tax. That's increasing, that's $4, $5, $7 billion in state revenue. And there's not an easy path to get to $7 billion or $6 billion in state revenue. So, we're really concerned about how this all plays out. And I think the Florida House made the right decision, tough decision, but the right decision to not expand Medicaid. And I know many of you agree with me in this room. So I think the big issues coming up this year, and I would love to hear some of your thoughts on this, is gaming is going to be probably number 1 or 2 issue this year in the Florida House and Florida Senate. The Seminole Compact is up for discussion. We've found out that we're one of the largest gaming states in America in Florida, and we don't have major casinos outside the Indian reservations and sovereign Indian lands. So we do have some casino game, not casino gaming, but we have slot machines in some of our pari-mutuels, so there's that. But there's a large discussion about, do we want destination resorts? Do we want more gaming in the state? So look forward to hearing your comments tonight on your thoughts on gaming. Believe it or not, a lot of people love internet cafes. I mean, just love them. And so, although, as you found, a lot of it was absolutely corrupt. I mean, Allied Veterans was an absolutely corrupted organization that was not giving any money to veterans and was not fulfilling their purpose and was doing some really, really terrible things. And so I think it was the right decision to kind of step back and say, all right, let's review what happens with that kind of gaming. So there's a lot of concerns about letting more gaming in the state, obviously. I think that's going to be a major issue. Other major issues this year, hopefully red light cameras will be a major issue that we bring up. Obviously, I filed a bill to deal with red light cameras. We'll see where that goes, we'll see if I can get the votes to get it out of my committee as Chair of Senate Transportation. But I think it's an issue that we're seeing be abused over and over and over again. So Manatee County just changed their right on red standards. They have the strictest right on red standards in the state of Florida. And they tripled the amount of tickets that they're writing on right on reds. You can see counties all around, our cities all around the state of Florida that have reduced the timing of their yellow lights. So before they had their red light cameras in, in some cases their yellow light timings were a full second longer. And I can tell you there is not one study out there that we've seen that shows that reducing the timing of your yellow lights increases safety. Everyone says, hey, if you add an extra second in yellow, you're gonna increase safety. So that and a lot of these cities are just raking in big bucks. There's a small city in Orlando, 2,500 residents, has one major intersection in kind of the Sanford, Orlando area. They wrote 10,000 tickets. So that's something like 10-15% of their overall city budget is red light camera tickets, and so it's hard for people to look me straight in the face and say it's not a backdoor tax increase. That this is a way for city councils to get together and say, hey guys, we need a couple $100,000. We could raise taxes, which would be politically unpopular and would come back to bite us, or we could put in red light cameras and we could get really strict on red light cameras and we could reduce the timing of our yellow lights. and we can increase the enforcement of right on reds, and we can get $200,000. And that's exactly what's happening. We know what's happening. We know that I can't find a city in the state of Florida that's losing money on the program that keeps them. If it's about safety, it's about safety whether you're making money or whether you're losing money. It's always about safety. And they get to spend the money on whatever they want. Right? So the money doesn't have to go into a defined pot for safety of the intersections. It doesn't have to go towards trauma centers. It doesn't have to go towards medical helicopters to fly people out that get involved in these types of accidents. It goes in the GR. And it goes to pay for the lawn mowing of the parks and other things like that. So let's take the money and make it go towards safety. And if we're going to keep these programs, let's make sure that the funds go towards things that actually make intersections safer. I think that's important. So we're going to work on red light cameras. Other obviously big issue locally is the light rail issue, and I think that's something that people really need to do the math on. So I was out in Portland, Oregon this summer, and for those of you who don't know, Portland, Oregon's slogan is "It's where young people go to retire." So it's a very interesting town. Was there with all their transportation executives, and they said, well, we don't want more parking spaces in downtown Portland. We don't want more people to drive downtown. We want everybody to take the light rail system and the other system, the light rail system and the trolley system throughout town. So, but Portland is, name me another city in Oregon, right? Maybe you can name a couple, like Eugene or someplace like that. But name me another city. It's the city of Oregon. It's the main drag there in Oregon. All of their funds are focused on that city. That's not the same way in Florida. And it's a pretty packed city if you've been there. It's pretty packed. Not the same way of Tampa Bay. So kind of my back of the napkin calculations, it's going to be about $600, $700 million to get a light rail across the bridge. I think all in to have a reasonable system in Tampa Bay that gets people to downtowns, that gets people to the beaches, that gets people to where actually people want to go. You're talking between $5 and $7 billion to do that. And when you do that, you will remove approximately 1% to 2% of traffic off the roads. So you'll have a system, and on top of that, you have to double your busing, right? So you can't it's not just light rail. You have to double all your busing capacity has to be doubled. If you have more than what we call 15-minute head time, so head time is, I arrive at a bus stop, and there's 15 minutes between the times that the buses are arriving. People won't ride. They won't ride your light rail system because they won't be able to get from point A to point B efficiently. And so this system that is proposed, $1.5 billion takes you from downtown St. Pete to downtown Clearwater. I don't know a lot of my friends that travel, and maybe you do, that go travel from downtown St. Pete to downtown Clearwater on a daily basis. And so it's hard to see how that will work, especially when it doesn't go to the airport. And the reason it doesn't go to the airport is because it would cost another $1.5 billion, just to take it from Gateway to the airport. Because you have to build systems, and you have to build the bridge across the pond there. So, but it's they're spending $400,000 or $500,000 of your money on green light Pinellas. That's education. It's not advocacy. When we put that on the back of the bus, that's all educating you about green light Pinellas. It's definitely not advocating for you to like it or not. I wish I could have $300,000 to advocate my position on green light Pinellas.
What if you're trying to increase taxes?
Oh yeah, no, it's a 1 cent sales tax, right? So to get a $5 to $7 billion, you would have to do a 1 or 2 cents. So you have to do a 2 cent sales tax for $5 billion. So it's a 1 cent sales tax, and it never goes away, right? This is not like penny for Pinellas that you can kind of vote out or comes out and sunsets every few years. This is a penny that never goes away. So if you live in the city of St. Petersburg, you would say, all right, we have one of the highest property taxes in the region. Oh, and we also have the highest sales tax, but we would love your business to locate here. And flood insurance is really expensive too. So we have to make, I have to make business cases to businesses to locate in our community. And I want to be able to look at them and say, we have a great community, we have low taxes, we have a great transportation network, because we do. We have a great transportation network. It struggles sometimes getting through Tampa stuff. But Tampa International Airport is one of the best airports in America, but one of the best airports in the world. And you can get to a lot of places through there. And it still takes you, you leave, it takes you an hour and a half to get to Orlando, or at least to Disney. And so we have a very robust transportation network in this area. But I think we can get there with other means. So hopefully we will hear announced in the next few months the Roosevelt Connector, which will connect 275 to 19 along 118th corridor. And so I anticipate that you'll hear that will be announced as a managed lane. So it will have a toll associated with it, which hopefully you in this room are not upset with.
But I use that all the time right now.
Right.
118th to go to Tampa.
So this will allow you to go from.
Pay a toll.
You'll still have free options. So there'll always be a free option. But this will allow you to go without a stoplight from downtown, from the Skyway Bridge to north of Countryside Mall without a stoplight. So really a north-south corridor being opened up in Pinellas County, something we've never had. I mean, in a real meaningful way like that. So a limited access corridor going through our community. And so what I think we need to talk about is what are our east-west corridors? Why is it that I can get to Paso Grill Beach from the airport quicker than I can get to Indian Rocks Beach? Well, because here I've got an interstate on the way. There I've got to stop at every stoplight. So we need some limited access corridors along that go east-west to Pinellas County, and we need to have that discussion. If we invested just a portion of our penny for Pinellas money in that kind of philosophy, here we would have roads that everybody can ride all the time. It would take some less traffic off the roads. I mean, we would get beyond the 1 or 2% of all riders. We would have real meaningful transportation networks in this community. And so I think that's the direction that we should be going. But right now, all of the focus is, hey, we need a train. And for me, I think we need east-west corridors because a train's not going to solve our problems. It's just not. So with that, I'll be happy to take some of your questions as we, because I know your time is precious. So, yes, sir.
Creating this railroad track, the train, how many jobs will we create? It would attract more people, more business to move to Pinellas County or not?
I think a 1 cent sales tax will hurt. It's a regressive tax, first of all. And I think it will hurt more than it helps because I think what you've seen in what we see in other areas of the state, so we have, in South Florida, we have Tri-Rail. In Jacksonville, we have this, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a monorail that runs through downtown Jacksonville, but it basically ships air from one side of Jacksonville to the other side. And we have,
Just like Miami.
right, we have Sunrail, which is yet to be up and running, but it's going to be, before it is up and running, is heavily subsidized by the state.
Right.
And I think what you have is your local communities that are afraid to bring on the cost of Sunrail to their local tax base. So what you see is it's when it comes to that kind of transportation, it's not working. It's not working at all. The state spends $1 billion on Tri-Rail, has spent $1 billion on Tri-Rail. We're spending a ton of money on alternatives, and the state of Florida it's huge. It's not a compact area like Boston or like DC or like Atlanta. So there's some real challenges that go along with that kind of structure, and the amount of takings that will have to occur are, eminent domain takings are pretty immense, and people will pay the fee for like 10 years before it's actually up and running. You'll pay 10 years of taxes before, and then they're going to make you pay for admission, right? They're going to make you, it's going to be ultimate insult to injury. At the first ride, you're still going to have to buy a ticket for after you've been paying for it for 10 years. Yes, sir.
The problem I have with it is that less than 0.1% of the people of Pinellas County will ever use it. About 100% of the people of Pinellas County is expected to pay for it.
Right.
So that means that 99.9% of us are paying for something that is not a service to us. It's basically not a service.
Right. I agree. But find me a handful of other political figures that are willing to step up and say we don't want it.
Well, I was told there's plenty of graft in there, so there's going to be a lot of people that want it.
Well, Tom, go ahead.
I want to address two things. One's a comment and a question.
Sure.
The thing about the flood insurance, and I speak with a professional background in this area, having an issue where you've got subsidized flood insurance puts conservatives in a difficult position because we don't generally like subsidies in the first
Sure.
place. But the one thing I wanted to suggest that if you want to get into this issue at its root, I would look at how the flood zone is calculated in the first place. And from my 30 years of experience, most of them are done by computer models, not by actual data. And those models are no more valid than the global warming models. So you might want to look at the other end of it to start with. But the question is, also being rather conservative, right now we get about anywhere between 30 and 40% of Florida's budget from the federal government. And I wonder if do you see that getting bigger or smaller, or is that a manageable direction that we can try to regain our fiscal independence from Washington?
So it is the question, I think a lot of that comes in the form of Medicaid subsidies, right? So a lot of that is Medicaid funds or education funds that are directly put into the state. So we pay money, they take their admission charge or their administration fee, and then they send our money back to us.
It also comes from a $20 million sidewalk along State Road 60 between Tampa and Clearwater.
Right. So I think I would love to see us begin to move away. But I mean, it's part of the broader discussions about what is the role of the federal government, and that's something that we're probably not going to accomplish here tonight. But I think at the beginning of my comments, I talked about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security being the areas that, without dispute, I mean, no, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, nobody disputes that those are the areas that are draining the federal budget and that are causing huge deficits in the federal budget. And so, but yet there's been very little leadership from the administration on those issues. But again, things are unsustainable will eventually stop, right? So what we saw over the last few weeks is the beginning of the stopping. You're going to see wild fluctuations. You're going to see impassioned speeches. You're going to see people who say, interest rates start rising. And when that happens, you're going to see real reform start to take place because people are going to realize that these things cannot continue. I mean, we've been able to hide this massive amount of debt that we put on our books in the last few years because, frankly, they borrow at the low end of the curve, right? So they're borrowing 1, 5, 10-year money, and it's pretty cheap today. If they were borrowing all at the 30-year end of the curve, trying to lock in these things, you would totally freak the markets out, and interest rates would spike in a matter of moments because the markets would begin to see through all of that. But I think it's part of a much broader discussion about how do we get our arms around the entitlements and what is a right versus what is a benefit versus what is what is charity. Because
Well, that's why I bring it up. Not to interrupt. It's time to start that broader discussion. Actually, that would have been about 40 years ago. But yes, it is a broader discussion, and it needs to be at the head of the discussion list because, well, as you say, what we have is not sustainable. And unfortunately, if that part is not sustainable, then the nation itself may not be sustainable. My take on it is I would rather give a penny to Tallahassee than 2 cents to Washington and have a penny returned.
right, they take their commission. So I think Churchill got it right many years ago. He knew Americans pretty well. And he said that Americans tend to do the right thing after we've exhausted all other options. So I think what you're seeing is us exhausting all other options, right? So we know eventually we'll get there. So go ahead.
Well, most of the people, I don't know if everybody here knows me, but I grew up in South Dakota, Nebraska, and my stepfather was the president of the rural electric co-op in South Dakota for like 30 years, and his pay was zero. The only thing he was paid was for his expenses to go to the meetings. So the co-op would actually rent all the rooms out for the hotels for them to go to meetings, and that's how they got electric and how they controlled the cost of electric. in the rural parts of, or throughout the entire state of South Dakota. But growing up in that area, the state owned all the gambling. They owned all the horse tracks and all the dog tracks. Now, there was a 6 cents sales tax, but there was no property tax. Property actually belonged to the individuals because the state gathered all the money it needed basically from gambling. Iowa, which was right next door to me, I mean, it was like 8 miles away from me, they own all the liquor stores. I mean, if you're going to buy liquor in Iowa, you're buying it from the state of Iowa. It wasn't entrepreneurs, it was state owned. And that's how they kept their taxes down. They actually took over an industry, you know, just like with gambling. And since you're bringing up gambling, why doesn't the state of Florida, just like Lotto, own the gambling and use it as income source?
Because that would be the #1 job for state legislators after we leave office.
Well, they didn't in Lotto. They hired a professional to take that over.
No, I think all of the, look, we do so little well.
So little, right?
I mean, and the problem with all governments is that, they all try to do too much. And so they can't do well the things that only governments can do. And
Well,
so-
I would say you pass the rule saying that they can't get paid any more than the governor. Okay, so what is the governor's fee? It's a certain amount.
Right.
And if you're working for the state, you cannot make more than the governor. Now, if I remember right, he's not taking any money now.
He's not. I think the highest paid state employee, last time I heard, was a dermatologist.
No, that's not correct.
Is it?
I thought it was the football coaches.
Exactly.
I thought it was the football
Maybe,
coaches
it's
like
probably
the
true. It's
Gators.
probably football coach. There you go. There you go. That's right. Yes, sir.
I had a couple of things.
Sure.
When we were Red Light County ago, John Lake told me that he wanted to be a sponsor,
Great.
co-sponsor.
Fantastic.
So,
We'll
my name's Brady Peeler.
go talk to him.
He knows me.
Okay.
If you go to him and he says something else,
I'm gonna call you.
Brady Peeler. He told Brady Peeler.
I'm just gonna call you. I'm gonna call you. You take care of
He
it.
knows.
Okay.
Brady will hunt him down.
Right. I know you. I know. I can tell.
Oh, the reason why I brought up the co-op was because I was talking about possibly doing a co-op in Florida for flood insurance. Because then it'd be a voluntary co-op membership.
And I think all options are gonna be on the table here shortly,
Okay.
unless the feds get their act together.
On flood insurance,
Sure.
Gus Billeracus tried to put together a consortium between I can't remember the exact states, but I believe it was North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, us, and I don't know if he went the other way of the coast. And it got voted down somehow. The other states, or there was some kind of a problem. But he was pretty hot to do it, and he wanted to take that and ensure all of us in the Gulf would put our assets together, and that basically replaced the flood insurance at the federal level with our own system. It would be more actuarially sound and phase it in and replace it some way. He couldn't even get anywhere with it. It was voted down.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that would work, if that's a better alternative, but it seems to me that's a better way for us to go.
I think his discussion was more like an overall catastrophe fund. I don't know that it was specifically flood. So I think it was overall catastrophe flood. But I think what you've seen is that that's what the flood insurance program was supposed to be. It was supposed to be an overall flood catastrophe fund, and didn't work. I mean, it was a failed experiment. And so what we don't want to do is to socialize risk, and that's what we've done with flood, with this
Right.
type of flood insurance. We've completely socialized risk, and what we want is to let private companies come in and write policies, but we need to phase that in. It's not something we can flick like a light switch on and say, oh, by the way, July 1 of last year, when none of you actually knew that this was actually law, if you bought a home, you go to actually sound rates. And that's what these folks did, to the point where, Brigitte decided not to run again for Congress, and Waters is a Democratic member from Los Angeles. Congress. Sorry.
Yeah, but she's a devout communist, and she
Oh,
said she
right.
is.
Well, but amazing thing, she stood up on the floor and said, of the House, and said, I had no clue what this bill meant and what my amendment did to this, and I want you to delay the whole thing. Well, it would have helped if she had read it and before she had decided to establish it. And right, I understand it. I
Like
understand that.
Pelosi, right?
Here's what you're
Pelosi's
seeing is, this is the kind of stuff that happens when you talk major pieces of legislation And then somebody comes to you, some lobbyist or some I'm sure this wasn't her idea, right? So I don't want to, this was an agency that came to her and said, hey, we need this fixed, we think this is the way to do it. It was probably written by some intern, and he said, hey, this will get us to actually sound rates in 5 years, and he didn't think to say, well, this was going to crush all the homeowners and the real estate markets and the cities and the counties where all these things are involved. And they threw it in there, and I think it's devastating. It really is devastating to this community if we don't have some type of resolution in the next few months.
Do you know the history behind this flood insurance? Because I've bought and sold.
Let someone else ask a question.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'll tell you.
I'm sorry, I bought and sold and I never bought flood insurance. I've never paid for flood insurance.
If you have a mortgage, that's going to be a Fannie or Freddie mortgage, you're going to have to get flood insurance on it.
Yeah,
If you're flooded out, you got to get flood insurance. So, yes, sir.
Well, what I was going to, related to the red light cameras, when I first looked at the intersections, I noticed these cameras that were pointing straight at me, and I'm like, oh, another red light camera, until people wised me out. And so, those aren't red light cameras, those are surveillance cameras, which are a whole lot worse. But what are we doing about those?
So a couple different things we're going to talk about. I actually have a bill that you'll see probably in the next few weeks that deals with license plate readers. Have you heard of license plate readers?
Oh, yeah.
So these are basically cameras that they install on police cars or lampposts, or on some of our island communities. The lamppost that goes in and out of the community has these license plate readers on, and it captures every time your vehicle passes there. It captures the license plate, it captures the time, and it captures the location. And so you can imagine 10 years from now, when every police car, it's like standard equipment, like the light bar or a shotgun in a police car is license plate readers, and everywhere they go, they tag your license plate. And today in Florida, that's subject to public records request. Public records request. So I could get your license plate number, figure out the city that you live in, figure out if they have a license plate reader, and request every time, from the history of time that they began using this I can request your license plate data and where exactly you've been. So, think about a police car that drives through your church, and it's all passive, right? So they can get 7,000 different hits an hour.
But how is this not a Fourth Amendment violation?
How is it not? I mean, it's not, because they will tell you that you were driving on public roads and that police officers could write down tomorrow or today your license plate if they chose. They probably couldn't do it at the scale that they do it to, but when police officers pull up behind your vehicle and you see them tapping away, they're running your plates to see if your plates match anything on their hot list.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just one stationary to beat everybody.
Yeah, they're just saying we're using technology just like you're able to use it. That's what they're saying. I mean, their argument is everybody should be able to use this technology, so we're using it just like you're using it.
Well, what's your argument?
Well, what is my argument?
What's your position on it?
My position is that you should, I'm not against law enforcement officers using technology, but they should be able to keep the data forever. They should be able to keep the data for a certain amount of time. I think you're going to see my bill come out and say you can keep the data for 30 days, but anything beyond 30 days you must destroy, and unless the data is flagged. So if it's a stolen vehicle, you can keep that data for longer. If it's an Amber Alert vehicle, you can keep the data for longer. I'm not against allowing law enforcement to use technology. I'm against allowing law enforcement to use technology that can track us all the time, everywhere we go. That's why last year I filed a bill that says you can't track my cell phone without a court order, because there's this doctrine out there called the third-party doctrine that started back with banking laws and has been so abused. It's how NSA gets all of their information. They get it through the use of what they call the third-party doctrine, right? If you want my email off of my phone, you got to get a search warrant for it today after the Smallwood decision last year. But I can go to Google with a subpoena, and if you have Gmail, I can get your email that way. So the scary thing is,
cameras themselves are a Fourth Amendment violation.
so I don't know if any of you.
Unreasonable search.
I don't know if any of you have ADT or a camera system inside your home or around your house put together by a third party, but the third party doctrine applies to them too. So imagine, yeah, it does. So you imagine you're a cable provider who also provides your security system. And because you have provided them, a third party, that data, the government can go there without a warrant, with a subpoena, or under color of law, and get a live stream into your kid's bedroom, or into your backyard, or wherever you've got those cameras pointing. Seriously, yeah.
That's based on that they think that if I give data to a third party, that I have no expectation of
Correct.
privacy, and that's obviously what we have to fight when
Right.
I do a contract with ADT or something. I do expect private contracts are private, so obviously we will have to work on that.
You would be shocked. I mean, but that's pretty scary stuff, right? Pretty scary stuff to think that we're using the third-party doctrine in such a format.
We have time for 2 more questions. So we've got Matt who's been waiting for quite a while, and then we'll take Daryl in the back.
So my question was related to the insurance, but then you answered it, but then I wanted to tie it back around. Is there anything being done about citizens, since you're talking about socialization of insurance?
So we are desperately trying to depopulate citizens. I mean, to the point where, 2 years ago, there was a lot of discussion about letting unregulated carriers write policies in Florida. So, company out of Bermuda could come write policies in Florida, but we're that desperate to get people out of citizens. People don't understand.
Is there a whole year where Florida can be out of the insurance business?
So there's some homes that it really, as you think about it, probably are not writable by other individuals. They just won't be written. Citizens has quite a surplus right now. And so whether we turn that into a CAT fund at the end of the day, where we have our own kind of catastrophic fund, or however we choose to handle the surplus of funds that we have inside of citizen property insurance today, I think there will be some homes for many, many years, not forever, obviously, but for many, many years inside of citizens. But I think we can get down another 400,000 or 500,000 homes not pretty easily, but I think using reasonable means we can get down there. One of the things we proposed last year was allowing people to do what we call quota share or risk share. So allow a private company to say, hey, we'll take 40% of the risk, state you take 60% of the risk, but we'll service the policy, we'll do everything. And I think that would be a reasonable way to scale out and get another. I think that's how the next 400,000 policies come out of citizens.
Jeff, I won't keep you long, but before you go, I'm just curious regarding the green light Nellis and the rail. I know that a lot of people that are involved will most likely never use this system. Their friends will probably never use it or anything, yet they're all advocating for it and they want it pushed. So my question to you is, it's actually twofold. It's one, what do you think is the real motivation behind it? Because despite the numbers, like you said, it's not really, there's many more options out there that are better for this to get the people around. So one, what is the real motivation behind it? Is it so that we look like a city that's moving forward or something like that? And two, what can me or somebody else do to assist legislators and everybody else to get our voices heard so that they understand, hey, not everybody's on board with this, and we really would like you to go with those other options.
So I don't think there are mischievous motives behind it.
I don't think there's mischievous, but maybe more like marketing or something like that.
I think it's one of those famous roads. It's one of those famous roads that's paved with good intentions.
Right.
Right. That's what this type of what's a famous track that's paved with good intentions. Not a road. But it's an example of where, the arguments there. Hey, we're the largest city that doesn't have light rail, and we need light rail in this region, so that young people, nobody in their 20s wants to drive a car, which is give me a break. But that's what you hear, right? That's the arguments that they use, is that that we need this in our community for that reason. And the polling, people love trains. I love trains. I mean, every time I go to Boston to visit my wife's family, I ride the train, just not because it's quicker or faster, because it's cool to do. But I got paid $2 for it. I don't have to pay sales tax every time. I mean, it's not a penny every time I buy something. So I think you're right, though. It's going to be a debacle. It's going to be, go to Tampa and ride the trolley. It ships air from one side of Tampa to the other side of Tampa. That's what it does. There's nobody on that. And they'll say, well, it doesn't connect to anything, right? Well, yeah, but St. Pete to Clearwater doesn't really connect with anything. And even people that would go to the airport, I can buy a lot of Priuses for $700 million. I could strategically place we could probably buy a Prius for every regular rider every 5 years.
Prius cabs, right?
Right, we could buy a Prius for every regular rider of Green Light Pinellas every 5 years.
You do like the bike share in DC, do that with
Right, sure, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So
But
how
it's-
can we help, Jeff?
So I think as this unfolds, right, you're going to need a group that gets together. You know, last year there was no tax for tracks, whether that group exists still or not.
Well,
But I think you're going to have some additional groups that pop up and really understand the issue. I think there's some national data and national speakers that can come down to this area. I know you all have had Randall O'Toole here not too long ago. But I think these people have fought this fight in other markets before, and I think we need to be reaching out to other markets where they fought this fight before and saying, all right, what worked, what didn't work? I mean, it didn't work in Hillsborough when they wanted at 1 cent. And I think part of the argument is this doesn't go where you want to go, right? It's what's the Visa card? It's everywhere you want to be. This is everywhere you don't want to be, right? So this is how we have to make our argument. I mean, we're going to have to put together an effort, and we're going to have obviously funds to fund that effort and messaging to message that effort. But I would imagine that kind of my gut tells me that for every dollar that they spend positively messaging for this type of product, we're going to have to spend about 10 cents negatively messaging, and we'll get the same effect, right? So I just don't think that people, at the same time that you have rising flood rates, at the same time that you have rising healthcare costs, at the same time that you have rising property taxes, at the same time you have all of these other things going on, and then we say, oh, by the way, we also want you to put the penny for Pinellas back on, and we want an additional cent for light rail. I mean,
Pay for it all.
right. Well, I think that's how you make the argument. You say, look, we have all of these additional costs going on in our life. Now is not the time.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you all so much. If you ever need to get in touch with me, please feel free to call my office on campaign matters. I mean, on campaign matters, don't call my office. But on other matters of state and of local issues, please feel free to call me. We're working really hard. We're going to have a great legislative agenda this year. I'm really excited for you to see some of the things we're working on. It's not just red light cameras, it's traffic cameras, it's adjusting statutes for inflation, the blocking and tackling of government that we get to do. We've got a bill that says you can't put a GPS on my car without my knowledge, because that's happening, unfortunately. People are stalking girlfriends and things like that by going to these little stores and grabbing GPSs, throwing them on their cars. They watch where they go. We have a bill that we just filed a couple days yesterday that says during a declared state of emergency, the concealed weapon permits, you don't have to have a concealed weapons permit. So at a time when there is no law enforcement, you should be able to protect yourself. So that's what that bill is all about. And then you're going to see a lot of other really interesting legislation, a lot of good transportation legislation rolling out. So I'll run the highway safety package, the transportation bill, and then I run an insurance bill every year that deals with exciting things like boiler inspectors and things of that nature. But it does have some other great parts of that, and we're able to make some real substantial changes. I think all positive consumer changes, but I think things that you will agree with. But I would just ask one thing from you, and that is read my legislation when it comes out, and if you don't like something, call me. You would be shocked how few phone calls I get on specific pieces of legislation. And I'm blessed to have a great staff, and they will, if you call on a specific piece of legislation, you say, hey, I've got a concern with this piece on this line, or what's your thinking behind this, you're going to talk to one of my staff that understands the bill and is going to be able to explain exactly what our thinking is, or we'll get you in touch with our staff or the staff directors of the committees that will explain to you exactly what our bill does. But I would encourage you as time goes on to go visit the House website, go visit the Senate website, learn the process, learn the people, learn how you can get all the documents. I don't know that all of you know that every single committee is videotaped, every committee is audio taped. You can go back and watch every committee hearing. I mean, those are kept forever. And you can see every amendment that's posted, and you can see how every member voted on every amendment that was posted. And it's actually a fairly easy process. It takes you about an hour to learn. The websites in the House and Senate aren't that different. They're a little bit different. I mean, the bodies are very different, but the websites aren't that different. but just go on there and consider making a trip up to Tallahassee during session. I think there's really something, I don't know if you've all been up there. Have any of you been up to Tallahassee in session? So some of you have. But take a day off work and come up to Tallahassee during session. It's a great experience. Hopefully maybe we can put together a little Liberty Caucus adventure. Caitlin's, mad at me now for telling that. But because we put together a lot of adventures. But come to Tallahassee, see the process in person. Go meet with your elected representative, your elected senator in their office in Tallahassee after you've read their bills, or when they have a bill coming up that you want them to vote in a certain way, and you will be shocked to understand that you're probably one of the 5 or 10 or 15 of their constituents that's actually come and met with them on a given bill in their office in Tallahassee. But see the process as it plays out during the course of the day, and watch the House chamber, watch the Senate chamber, watch the differences between the two, watch the process, watch that some amendments get on a bill without a review, with unanimous consent. So nobody even says, hey, how many people are up on this thing, how many people are down? They just say, is there any opposition? And most of the time they do a lot of times with unanimous consent. And you'd be shocked what goes on to bills like Common Core with unanimous consent that we didn't even talk about, but obviously is a major issue. Let me just kind of spend 1 second, Caitlin, on this because it's important. Common Core is, so it's the law today when it comes to English and math. And I think what you're going to see is there will be no expansion beyond English and math. I think you're going to see us evaluating carefully whether the English and math standards are the ones that we want. And I think for the most part, you're going to see us being very careful and prudent about how we examine our students based on those standards. But I think without your opposition, without your discussion, without your debate, and without your commitment to that subject, that would not be on anybody's radar screen. But I can tell you that as a Republican senator, and obviously as the governor, and the education staff throughout the state, it is absolutely on their radar screen, but because of your commitment. And I think it has been a healthy process in the fact that I think people care more about curriculum today in their local school districts than they ever have before at the local level. And so I think that if there has been a positive that's come out of it, it's been a heightened awareness on curriculum and the things that we can do at the local level to make sure that we're educating our students in the right way, that our local community decides is right for them. So with that, thank you so much for having me. God bless you. God bless the great state of Florida. And thanks again.